Good morning, you're watching Daybreak live on A News and I'm here to take you through the day's top stories. Let's take a look at the headlines. Trump says the war against Iran could end very soon, but warned military operations will continue. Oil prices fall after Trump signals the war with Iran could end soon. NATO says it's ready to defend all allies after Iranian ballistic missiles entered Turkish airspace. First, this morning, US President Donald Trump says the military campaign against Iran is already achieving major results, claiming Tehran's missiles and drone capabilities have been significantly weakened. But despite suggesting the war could end soon, he warned operations will continue until Iran can no longer threaten the United States or its allies.
US President Donald Trump says the war against Iran could end soon, but warned that military operations will continue until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. Speaking in Florida, Trump described the campaign as a short-term excursion, claiming US and Israeli forces have already destroyed much of Iran's military infrastructure.
We continue to target Iran's drone and missile capabilities. Their drones are way down. Their drone manufacturing has been hit.
Trump also stressed that Washington's goal is to ensure Iran cannot develop weapons that could threaten the United States, Israel, or their allies for a long time. Meanwhile, Israel says it has continued carrying out waves of airstrikes across Iran, targeting military command centers, missile production facilities, and other infrastructure linked to the Iranian military. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described the conflict as a war imposed on Iran, insisting the country's actions are acts of self-defense. He also said Iran is unlikely to resume negotiations with Washington after what he called a bitter experience with past talks. The conflict escalated further after Mojtaba Khamenei was appointed Iran's new supreme leader following the death of his father, Ali Khamenei, in earlier US-Israeli strikes. With the fighting now entering its second week, tensions remain high across the region, raising concerns the conflict could widen further.
Now let's take a look at the stories shaping the day across the globe, and we head first to our A News website in relation to oil prices, which climbs past $119 a barrel as Iran crisis squeezes global supply. That's Monday, 9th of March. Now, since then, things have actually changed and now oil prices have dropped. So if we now go to the Guardian website with a more updated picture of what this now looks like, and that oil drop actually comes now that after Donald Trump suggested the US-Israel war on Iran could end very soon. And it was Brent crude oil, the international benchmark, that surged beyond the $100 per barrel mark on Monday since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Now, in a CBS interview, Trump said the war on Iran was very complete, pretty much, is what he said, and that Brent crude fell back down quite sharply to $98.96. Now, that might not seem as a big drop. However, it is falling because it was at $119.50. So it is actually having an impact. Now, Donald Trump also suggested the US may lift oil sanctions against some countries to ease prices. India has already been given the go-ahead to do that, and they have been given a waiver of 30 days to purchase Russian oil. If you remember, a past month ago, Russian oil was very much restricted, and India was basically said that they would not purchase Russian oil in agreement to stay aligned with the US, but that has now changed. Trump said that the US will not let Iran hold the world at hostage over oil, is what he was telling reporters at a news press conference yesterday. He says, "We will hit them so hard that it will not be possible for them or anyone else helping them to ever recover that section of the world if they do anything." So we are watching very carefully. The developments change day by day in regards regards to the war in Iran, and with Israel and the US also fighting them on their home ground and in their other areas such as Lebanon, Beirut, in the capital Beirut as well. Okay, now let's go to our next headline that's also making headlines this morning, and that's staying with the war in Iran, but what oil prices are doing. And Bangladesh shuts universities, limits fuel sale as Iran causes a war causes shortage. Now, Bangladesh has decided that that's what it's going to do. It's part of an emergency measure to conserve electricity and fuel. Now, officials said the move will not reduce electricity consumption, but also ease traffic congestion, which you can see here. Loads of people at the pumps trying to get their fuel for the day, even though the prices are extremely high. So they don't want for it to lead to a fuel wastage. Now, Bangladesh relies on imports for 95% of its energy needs. And on Friday, they also imposed daily limits on fuel sales after panic buying and stockpiling took place in the country. Now, they're not the only ones. Alongside the closures, the government issued guidelines encouraging institutions and offices to use electricity more efficiently, including maximizing natural daylight hours and minimizing unnecessary lighting and power consumption. And as I mentioned, it was Bangladesh, but also their neighbour Pakistan. Pakistan also, its Prime Minister announced on Monday that schools would close for 2 weeks and office workers would work more from home. The war is definitely having a wider impact on the world, severely hampering oil and gas exports and driving up costs. And now we're seeing that in a number of countries as well. We now move over to our next headline, which is on the Le Monde website in relation to what's been going on in France. And a French court rejects Sarkozy's bid to merge sentences. Now, this was given out on Monday, yesterday evening. So a French court ruled on the Monday that former President Nicolas Sarkozy must serve his sentence for a conviction of illegal campaigning funding. His lawyer funding is what was the reason for that. So his lawyer sought to merge both sentences, the two separate convictions, but that actually has been overturned. The decision may require the ex-president, who served one term from 2007 to 2012 as well, and has faced a series of legal issues since leaving office, to again wear an electric ankle tag. And just a reminder of how this all came about. Last year, Sarkozy became modern France's first president to go to jail. He served 20 days in a case related to alleged Libyan funding in his 2007 election campaign. Now, the 71-year-old has received 2 definitive convictions as well in relation to that. And one of the facts in relation to Sarkozy is that he is the first French leader to be incarcerated since Philippe Pétain, the Nazi collaborationist, head of state, who was jailed after World War II. So it's quite significant that a former leader, former Prime Minister, is now jailed, and his sentences has to be realised and has to be actually done in regards to him trying to get both of them to be put together, which is not what the French court has decided to do at this time. We now go to the next headline, and that's in regards to Cuba, and that's on USA Today, what President Donald Trump is saying. So the top headline, if we just scroll up that little bit more, it should show that Trump says regime change in Cuba may be baby-friendly takeover or not. So this also comes out of his news press conference yesterday evening. And President Donald Trump said Cuba would have to make a deal in a friendly takeover or face an unfriendly takeover of its communist regime. And if we remember earlier in January, that's exactly what he did when he captured Maduro, in Venezuela's leader. Now, Trump said at the news conference that without Venezuela aid, Cuba has no fuel or money, and the country is running on fumes. So Trump went on to say they have no energy, they have no money, they're in deep trouble on a humanitarian basis. Now, we do also know that this is causing a lot of people in Cuba to face a number of difficulties. Humanitarian aid, not only that they're not able to go to work as much as they need to, there's very, very little fuel that they are receiving at the moment. So it's something that they are definitely trying to sort. But right now, their biggest importer is no longer there for them, which is Venezuela. Trump also argued that Cuba had depended for decades on Venezuela aid, which has run dry after the US capture of Nicolas Maduro, as I mentioned. Now, also just to add very quickly, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, whose parents actually immigrated from Cuba, has been negotiating with the country's leadership to avoid a military confrontation in relation to that. But we'll bring you more in regards to all that's happening across the world. But that's your press roundup for now. Now let's go to a short break, and when I return, I'll discuss the rest of the stories. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's have a look at the global stories. We turn back to the war in Iran, and oil prices have fallen after surging to their highest level in more than 3 years as US President Donald Trump signaled the war could end sooner than expected. Markets reacted quickly, but analysts warn volatility is likely to continue.
Global oil markets have been swinging sharply as the conflict involving Iran disrupts supplies from one of the world's most critical energy regions. At the start of the week, prices surged above $100 a barrel and briefly approached $120, their highest levels since 2022. Traders feared a prolonged conflict could cut supplies from the Gulf, particularly after shipping through the Strait of Hormuz was disrupted. The narrow waterway carries around a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas. Tankers have struggled to move through the area, while some producers halted pumping as storage filled. Prices then dropped more than 6% after US President Donald Trump predicted the war could end sooner than expected and outlined steps to ease pressure on energy markets.
I might add, we're also waiving certain oil-related sanctions to reduce prices. So we have sanctions on some countries. We're going to take those sanctions off till this straightens out. Then who knows, maybe we won't have to put them on. There'll be so much peace. But when the time comes, the U.S. Navy and its partners will escort tankers through the strait if needed.
Shortly afterwards, Trump also posted on X warning Iran against blocking oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, saying the United States would respond with far stronger military action if the flow of oil was stopped. Despite the drop, analysts say the conflict could keep markets on edge.
And if we keep on pushing above $100 a barrel and get more toward like 110, I think you're going to see that nationwide pump price average get close to $4 a gallon. That's painful for consumers, and it's probably also painful for elected leaders, the politicians. We're also going to see higher prices in things like airfares. So travel will become more expensive. And then we also have to worry about the second-order effects on things like the equity markets.
Analysts warn there could also be wider knock-on effects on financial markets, saying falling stock portfolios and retirement savings could weaken consumer confidence and business spending, potentially pushing the economy towards recession. Governments in Europe are also weighing possible emergency measures as prices surge.
The oil reserves are being held exactly for situations like this. If we are facing crisis, if we are facing disruptions of supply, that's exactly where we can intervene.
The shock is already spreading through national economies. Egypt has raised domestic fuel prices by up to 17%. While Pakistan has announced emergency measures to cut government fuel use after record increases in petrol and diesel prices.
Even though oil prices are slightly falling, concern still remains about supply and inflation. G7 countries say they are ready to respond if needed as markets react to disruptions and uncertainty in key energy routes.
On Monday, G7 countries said they are prepared to take measures to support energy supplies in response to the sharp rise in global oil prices. However, finance ministers have yet to decide on releasing strategic reserves. French Finance Minister Lescure said there are no supply problems in Europe or the US.
I want to be very clear today. The oil market, and the gas market as well, is being affected by disruptions mainly linked to the fact that oil and gas exports leaving the Middle East are heading to Asia, a region therefore directly impacted by market upheavals.
On Monday, oil prices reached their highest levels since mid-2022. The rise was driven by shipping disruptions and production cuts from some oil-producing countries. A G7 official said there is broad agreement not to release reserves at this stage. The final decision rests with G7 leaders. IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol said the market has worsened in recent days. Transit issues through the Strait of Hormuz and production cuts are creating serious risks. Birol also said he is in regular contact with energy ministers from Saudi Arabia, Brazil, India, Azerbaijan and Singapore. The IEA reports that member countries hold over 1.2 billion barrels of public oil reserves, plus an additional 600 million barrels of industry stocks. The agency was established after the 1970s oil crisis. Member countries are required to keep at least 90 days' worth of oil imports in reserve. In 2022, over 180 million barrels of oil were released collectively. Energy supply problems in the region could raise global prices and inflation. On Monday morning in Asia, Brent crude rose over 25% to $119.50 a barrel, then fell to about $102. UK gas prices jumped to 171 pence per therm, then dropped to 149 pence. Global stock markets fell, S&P 500 down 0.2%, Dow Jones 0.5%, FTSE 100 0.3%. Shell and BP shares rose 2.4% and 1.9%. Germany's DAX fell 0.8%. France's CAC 40 down 1%, Japan's Nikkei 225 down 5.2%, South Korea's Kospi down 6%. In the UK, interest rates keep rising, 2-year bonds at 4.09%, 10-year at 4.72%.
And it's interest rates that markets are closely looking at. The rise in tensions around the Strait of Hormuz is causing uncertainty and pushing prices higher. This report looks further into what the cause of the problem is.
As the war in the Middle East enters its second week, global markets have begun reacting to the growing instability in the region. One sector particularly affected is the oil market, where prices have surged due to tightening supply. A key factor behind the disruption is the Strait of Hormuz. Located between Iran and Oman, the narrow waterway connects the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. Roughly 1/5 of the world's total oil consumption passes through the strait. Major OPEC producers, including Saudi Arabia, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait and Iraq, ship most of their crude through this route, largely to Asian markets. According to shipping analytics firm Vortexa, more than 20 million barrels of crude, condensate and refined fuels moved through the strait each day on average last year.
It's a critical point in the waterway because much of the world's energy, be it oil products, liquefied natural gas, transits through that choke point, which again, fuels life, I suppose, in Asia and the rest of the world. So from a crude oil point of view, about 20% of the world's oil flows through there on a daily basis. So too the same for liquefied natural gas, and slightly higher as well for petrochemical feedstocks as well. So things that go into making plastics. So essentially this really narrow choke point waterway is critical to the global economy.
Among European countries, Britain, Italy, Belgium and Poland are among those most reliant on liquefied natural gas, with Qatar one of the world's largest exporters. After moving away from Russian energy following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, Europe has increasingly relied on energy imports from the Gulf region. Shipping data shows that more than 200 vessels, including oil and liquefied natural gas tankers, have anchored around the Strait of Hormuz and nearby waters amid the escalating conflict involving Iran.
As it stands, it is not officially closed. However, there is a sort of de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Reasons for that is the Iranians are attacking or threaten to attack any sort of vessels that pass through the strait. And given the nature of the conflict and how widespread it is in the Middle East right now, freight rates for ships are prohibitively high, and there is a lack of basically insurance being given to any vessel.
The disruption has immediately pushed up energy prices. Oil prices surged above $119 per barrel on Monday, reaching levels not seen since mid-2022, as some producers reduced supply and fears of prolonged shipping disruptions unsettled the market. As the conflict continues, it remains uncertain when normal shipping traffic through the strait will resume or whether alternative routes will be used to ease the disruption.
Moving now to the battlefield, and the conflict between Iran and Israel is intensifying with new missile strikes every day. Our news correspondent Maria Rodriguez Albadi is in Jerusalem and sent us this.
One person was killed and 2 others critically injured when an Iranian missile struck central Israel. The victims were construction workers at a site where missile debris landed. At least 6 impact sites reported today after cluster bomb attack over the country. We are in Jerusalem, and although the situation here seems calmer at first glance, we can hear loud interceptions, but it is unclear where they are happening. The sirens in the OCD do not activate unless there is a direct threat. Also, the number of shelters is much lower than in Tel Aviv. The buildings are much older and consequently are not adapted to current safety regulations. USA envoys Witkoff and Kastner canceled their visit to Israel set for Tuesday. IDF says Hezbollah gunmen operating in Christian village in South Lebanon targeted in a strike. IDF troops began a targeted and limited raid to eliminate and dismantle Hezbollah infrastructure. Prior to the entry of ground forces, numerous targets were struck from the air and ground. This operation aims to strengthen forward defensive positions and provide an additional layer of protections for residents of northern Israel right now who are in the greatest danger.
Flash floods have struck Kenya's capital, Nairobi, after days of heavy rain, causing widespread damage across the city and killing 23 residents overnight. Rescue teams and police are recovering victims from collapsed structures, debris and vehicles carried away some of the surge. Local residents say the water rose suddenly, trapping people in traffic and destroying small businesses. The flooding also disrupted operations in Nairobi's main airport, with several flights diverted. Forecasters warn heavy rain could continue until Monday night. Turning to Australia, and 5 members of the Iranian women's football team have been granted humanitarian visas after their elimination in the Asian Cup. The Immigration Minister Tony Burke said the women were moved to a safe location by Australian police. Supporters feared for their safety after the team declined to sing the national anthem ahead of their match against South Korea last week.
Last night, I was able to tell 5 members of the Iranian women's soccer team that they are welcome to stay in Australia, that they are safe here, and they should feel at home here. In the very early hours of yesterday morning, the conversation started in earnest. Once that happened during the course of yesterday, it was made clear that there were 5 women who wanted to be able to stay in Australia. They were moved to a safe location by the Australian Federal Police, and last night I met with them at that location. Once everything had been signed off last night, there were lots of photos, lots of celebrating, and then a spontaneous outbreak of Aussie, Aussie, Aussie, oi, oi, oi. These women are great athletes, great people, and they're going to feel very much at home in Australia.
NATO began its biennial cold response exercises in the Arctic on Monday. This year, the drills place greater emphasis on the role of civilians in supporting the military. NATO's Arctic Sentry drills aim to strengthen its Arctic presence. The exercises take place across northern Norway and Finland near the border with Russia. About 25,000 troops from 14 countries, including 4,000 Americans, will also join. The US pulled one F-35 squadron without saying if the Middle East conflict affected this. Norway calls 2026 the year of total defence to boost civilian and institutional readiness. Governments worldwide are stepping up efforts to protect children online, pushing platforms to strengthen age checks and limit minors' access to certain services. Here's more.
Governments worldwide are working to protect minors from social networks and adult online services. Tech companies used to say age verification was hard, but this is no longer an excuse. Australia started by banning social media accounts for minors. Europe, Brazil, and some US states plan similar rules. California Governor Gavin Newsom supports age limits, and President Donald Trump is also interested. Officials say teen mental health, online abuse, and AI-generated sexual content make these rules necessary. New technologies like facial recognition, ID checks, parental approval, and behavioral signals make age verification more reliable. San Francisco-based Persona helps check users' identities online.
I think it's really important as we think about this space to make sure that we're making that trade-off constantly, which is like not collecting so much such that like it stops everything, but also like making sure that like the absolute simplest thing is doing something. Like I think these days there's such a perspective that everything has to be absolutely like perfect or otherwise. Yeah, so you can see there, you can see how the face is blurry. It actually helps it.
Song adds that the company tests ways teenagers might try to fool scanners, such as wearing masks or holding action figures up to the camera. Early data from Australia shows millions of underage accounts have been blocked, though some platforms do very little. Regulators in Europe and the UK are watching closely as they think about stricter rules. Industry groups warn that platforms are testing limits as pressure for global standards increases.
Residents of the Ukrainian port city of Odessa gathered by the Black Sea early Sunday morning to welcome the sunrise with music, which has become a tradition in Odessa. The open-air performance marked the return of the city's sunrise piano concert season, offering a rare moment of calm as the war with Russia continues.
To the soft sound of a piano, hundreds of people gathered along Odessa's waterfront before dawn on Sunday. They came to hear Ukrainian pianist and composer Igor Yanchuk, who resumed his weekly sunrise concerts after a 4-month winter break. Standing under the open sky beside the Black Sea, Yanchuk says the setting creates a unique harmony between music and nature. For Yanchuk, the performances are not only about music, but also about helping people find calm during difficult times.
Here, under the open sky, the live vibration and live wave of the piano string merge with the live wave of the sea and the live cries of seagulls. It creates a very interesting formula. If you add love to it, and I love what I do in music, it helps people find and gain peace of mind, confidence in today, and for some, to start everything from a clean slate after such an event.
Spectators say the concerts offer a rare moment of peace as Ukraine enters the 5th year of Russia's full-scale invasion. Just over a day earlier, Odessa had come under a Russian drone and missile attack that damaged port infrastructure nearby. Despite that, many residents say moments like these help them cope with the stress of war.
In fact, it is very important to devote time in your life to find an opportunity for moments like these. It heals, it calms. Actually, despite all the alarms of the previous night, or rather, the night before last, this is truly like a panacea for the soul.
This is worth living for. It is everything that brings us joy today, to live every day, to feel this life, to sense it, to love.
One just wants this to end, to be distracted, just to listen to music and be glad that Odessa is celebrating this day, or night you could say, in this way. We are waiting for victory.
The Sunrise piano concerts are expected to continue weekly through the warmer months, bringing music and a sense of resilience to the city's shoreline.
That was lovely there. Definitely some music to help you through the wintry months. Now we're going to take a quick break. When I return, I'll be joined by a regional guest to go through some of the stories today. Stay with me. Welcome back and thank you for joining me this morning. Now we head over to what's going on in relation to the region. And EU leaders addressed diplomats in Brussels on Monday with a clear warning. Europe must act decisively as tensions rise in the Gulf and the crisis in Iran deepens. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, together with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, has urged member states to stay united, support the people of Iran and show that Europe is ready to act as a credible global player.
And our message to the world is that they should not underestimate Europe's resolve, strength and willingness to act. We need to allow Europe to be seen as the credible actor that it is. Iran's attacks on the Gulf, including in the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman, they are condemnable, they are unjustifiable, and they must stop immediately. Just as every member state must know for certain that we will stand together to face down any threat. And in this regard, we must continue to stand with the people of Iran. Their fight for freedom and the ability to choose their own destiny is not political, but existential. And
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has also highlighted the growing importance of the Middle Corridor, stating that it could reduce delivery times between Asia and Europe from around 30 days to just 15. Speaking at the Ambassadors' Conference in Brussels, she stressed that the corridor can strengthen trade while encouraging stability in the South Caucasus. Joining me now to discuss this and Azerbaijan's role in connecting Asia to Europe is political analyst Ulviya Zulfikar. Thank you and welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
My first question really is, what do you think are the key takeaways from the European Union's renewed emphasis on the Middle Corridor for the South Caucasus and Azerbaijan's strategic role within it?
Thank you for your question. Yes, as Ursula von der Leyen stated, this statement also reflects the growing important role of this corridor during this, like geopolitical shift and realities in the region, and it shows its important role in trade architecture. And I could say that Azerbaijan plays a unique role here, linking as a linking hub between South Caucasus, Caspian region, and Europe especially. And European Union right now seeks safer routes just for its supply chain. And we know that there are wars, there are crises, and every country, especially European Union countries, are right now searching for safer routes rather than traditional Eurasian routes. And for this reason, Middle Corridor plays a very important role. And Azerbaijan is a middle pillar in this transportation route. As Ursula von der Leyen stated, can reduce from 30 days to 15 days, and it doesn't just mean time delivery. It means that very much for global trade markets, like lower costs, like stable supply chains, like more competitive markets, and especially not just trade benefits. It means geopolitical and political benefits for the countries itself also. And Azerbaijan, as we know that Azerbaijan always is a peace initiator, trade initiators, and right now Azerbaijan is here more plays a role that like stable and safer roads for European countries. And I could say that this road just not only, middle corridor, it's linking with other corridors, other roads, other transportation routes. I could say that Zangezur corridor, if when it's opened, it can play more crucial role here also. And yes, we can say that Azerbaijan is a stable partner for European Union because as a traditional hydrocarbonate supplier, Azerbaijan already showed itself as a stable partner. But Azerbaijan's role in green energy, we cannot deny that green energy also right now in the middle of the attention of the European Union. Some days before, there were fruitful discussions between European Union and Azerbaijan about the green energy. So we could say that in the geopolitical realities right now in the world, we know that there are wars, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, United States itself, Israel, European Union is searching for more stable and safer ways to exist just now, and for more supply chains. That's now the importance of middle corridor is crucial.
Yes, and with, as you mentioned, there's so many different things happening, and obviously as well as tensions or conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So there's quite a few. We're in, a world where loads of conflicts are happening. Do you think the ongoing crisis then in Iran will push the EU to become more proactive in supporting connectivity and stability initiatives then?
It already shows its activity. The European Union already stated in the face of Ursula von der Leyen its initiative, and not only because of Iran. That no one knows what will happen next if we are at the beginning of World War III or not. No one knows about this. But right now, the more roads, of course, means more safety for European Union. And I'd like to mention that it means more safety for the region itself also, because when countries make trade with other countries, they take care of their stability also, because there are investments, there are supply chains, and right now European Union will take care of the stability of the road. I could say that not only South Caucasus Road, but the line itself, which comes from China, from Kazakhstan, Central Asian countries. China also right now seeks for a safer and shorter way to supply goods to European Union, and 15 days means very much to the countries. Trade giant like China, it means 15 days, it means too much for them. And for Kazakhstan, for Central Asian countries, it also means very much, because that means lower costs, that means more safety, that means more goods to deliver to European countries, and who can say that from European countries it can be delivered to United States and other continents also.
Yes, no, definitely. And earlier discussions also highlighted potential European investment in connectivity toward Nakhchivan. Could this then become a new pillar of EU agreement with Azerbaijan's regional transport infrastructure?
We can say that this corridor means more investment, more cooperation for not only between Azerbaijan and European Union countries, but between Central Asian countries, between China, and yes, the central pillar between European Union countries and Azerbaijan, South Caucasus also. And it can benefit not only European Union, it can benefit South Caucasus also. And we know that from peace initiatives, Azerbaijan brings more benefit to South Caucasus region. It means for Georgia, for Armenia, for Turkey, more benefits too, because the European Union countries and China also, of course, can make more investments to the region, because there is a route right now, in the face of middle corridor. This road will supply good chains to European Union. That means there can be more investments. There can be more investment not only to transportation, just to the infrastructure, to other. It means wider investments. They can see for example, green energy of the region. They can see touristic potential of the region. So it means very too much prosperity for the region.
Which sounds like a very positive step. Yeah. So then how can coordination within the organization of the Turkic states then strengthen the Middle Corridor and ensure unified transport standards among Turkic countries?
Turkic countries, exist in the Middle East, in the Central Asia also. Turkic countries exist there also, and there are new platforms like Central Asian countries, including Azerbaijan also. And Turkic state countries can be linked between them too much, like Turkey here, Azerbaijan, Central Asian countries. If there are more trade, if there are more investments, that means that they will come together more and more. They will discuss not only trade issues, geopolitical issues, and it can push creation of the more organizations. The Turkic state organizations is very, very good political, it has a very good political future, and why not trade future can follow it.
Yes, and to what extent then will instability in the Persian Gulf, which you kind of touched upon, and broader energy security concerns accelerate EU investment in the Middle Corridor?
Yeah. Yes, we say that EU investments in the Middle Corridor means that the standards can come to the region. European Union standards can come to not only to South Caucasus, to Central Asia also, and this corridor will meet, Eastern and Western traditions. The Western standards can come to the region and meet here Eastern, enrichment. And we know that from China there comes, not only food and also other trade units. I can say that, for example, China has huge potential of car investments. We see that lately, last year in the region, we saw that huge, cars came to the region, South Caucasus, yes. And yes. Why not to trade them with the European Union? And we know that European Union cars are very, have high standards, and if China meets their high standards too, there can be very good cooperation, and South Caucasus can be the hub of linking these standards and prosperity too.
Which sounds like that there's just a number of different opportunities that the Middle Corridor provides for the EU as well as China and Turkic states in regards to that. So therefore, could enhanced connectivity through the South Caucasus transform the region from geopolitical fault line into a central hub, as you mentioned, a central hub of Euro-Asian trade?
Yeah, we already mentioned about this, that this hub can bring together European Union countries. We know that there are many countries in Europe, and Azerbaijan has already, supplies 16 countries of Europe with gas. We have very bright past, like an energy supplier, and European Union sees Azerbaijan and as a energy diversification hub. That's why Eurasian trade, yes, we can look closely to the road, and we can look wider, of course. From any perspective, this road brings together wider countries like European Union countries, Central Asian countries, which are right now the rising stars, and China also. Mm-hmm. So let's see that China is in another side of the world, and here European Union, and what brings them together is South Caucasus region and Caspian region. Can say Caspian region, that means wider, for example, Central Asian countries. Yes. Also. Then Georgia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Central Asia is in the middle of this road, and China and European Union are on both sides. That means a very wider prosperity.
Yes, yes. It sounds all very positive. Yeah, so we'll definitely be keeping close watch as to it continues to develop, and also what's going on in the conflict in Iran that's putting more pressure to get a Middle Corridor sorted for all, Eurasia and China to more or less use this Middle Corridor that Azerbaijan is definitely, committed to. So thank you, Zulfikar, for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. Now, NATO says it is ready to defend all allies after Iranian ballistic missiles entered Turkish airspace for the second time this week. The missiles was intercepted by Turkish and NATO forces after entering its airspace near the Syria border. The incidents come as US-Israeli strikes on Iran continue raising tensions across the Middle East. In response, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan warned that Turkey will take all necessary measures to defend its territory and strengthen national security.
Akabinde İran makamlarına gerekli ikazlar yapıldı.
After interception of the first missile, we warned Iranian authorities. But I have to underline that, despite our sincere warnings, provocative steps are being taken by Iran, which will jeopardize the friendship of Turkey.
Ve provokatif adımlar atılmaya.
Afghanistan's trade routes are shifting as Iranian ports take on a growing role in supplying essential goods to the country. The change comes as tensions with Pakistan continue to affect traditional transit routes. A news correspondent, Tamim Bahis, has the details from Kabul.
The Iranian embassy in Kabul says a shipment of essential commodities from Iranian ports to Afghanistan have increased sharply, marking what officials describe as a new high in trade activity. According to a statement from the embassy, Iran's first vice president Mohammad Reza Arif said the allocation and transfer of essential goods from Iranian ports to Afghanistan have increased significantly in recent months. The statement also quoted Iran's Minister of Roads and Urban Development, Farzaneh Sadegh, who said the loading of cargo trucks at Iranian ports has increased by 53% compared to the period before the recent conflicts affecting regional trade. Officials said the rise reflects growing reliance on Iranian ports for Afghan imports. The development comes after Pakistan closed its ports and transit routes to Afghan traders since October last year, amid rising tensions between the two countries. Since then, Afghan traders have increasingly turned to Iranian ports to move goods into the country, creating a noticeable shift into regional trade flows. Analysts say the change could reshape Afghanistan's supply routes if the trend continues. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
China's space program is continuing its research in orbit. Astronauts aboard the Tiangong space station have been carrying out medical and scientific experiments, studying how the brain works and how humans cooperate with machines in space. Our correspondent Manor Makhdoom in China has more.
China's Shenzhou 21 astronauts have been carrying out a range of scientific and medical experiments aboard the Tiangong space station, according to the China Manned Space Agency. Over the past week, the 3 crew members carried out experiments in space medicine and brain science, including studies on trust and cooperation between humans and machines in space. The crew also used brain monitoring equipment to collect data for experiments on how astronauts think, make decisions, and manage emotions in space. Alongside these studies, they conducted maintenance work and microgravity experiments on the station, including tasks related to combustion and fluid physics research. They also completed several medical tests, while a traditional Chinese medicine diagnostic device was used to collect further health data for teams monitoring the crew on Earth. In February, the crew enjoyed the harvest of tomatoes grown in orbit. Aeroponic cultivation experiments are also planned for wheat, carrots, as well as medicinal and edible plants in the future. Launched into space on October 31st last year, the Shenzhou 21 crew has now spent more than 100 days of its 6-month mission in orbit. Manu Mathim, A News, Beijing.
It's time for a quick break. When I return, I'll have a full update on the latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the front pages this morning. Stay with me. Good morning, you're watching Daybreak, and if you're just joining me, I'm your host, Nadia Jani, taking you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at the headlines. Trump says the war against Iran could end very soon, but warned military operations will continue. Oil prices fall after Trump signals the war with Iran could end. NATO says it's ready to defend all allies after Iranian ballistic missiles enter Turkish airspace. Now let's take a look at the story shaping the day across the globe, and we head first to Al Jazeera website in regards to what took place in Turkey. And Turkey says Iranian ballistic missile intercepted by NATO air defences. Now the Ministry of National Defence says NATO air defensive were able to intercept the ballistic missiles which were launched from Iran toward Turkey. The missile was intercepted on Monday over the Sanbay district of Gaziantep in southern Turkey. Now there has been a statement and it said Ankara emphasized its capability and determination to protect national airspace and border security, while warning that further escalation in the region must be avoided. Now, according to local authorities, Monday's incident was the second time an Iranian ballistic missile was fired towards Turkey since the US and Israel launched a war against Iran. Now, the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian actually spoke with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Monday in regards to that, but no details as to what they spoke about has been released. But NATO did post on X and said that NATO stands firm in its readiness to defend all allies against any threat in regards to that. And we have more information on that story later on in the programme. We now turn to our next story, and that's on Le Monde French website in regards to what took place in France. And French court rejects Sarkozy's bid to merge sentences. Now, a French court ruled on the Monday that former President Nicolas Sarkozy must serve his sentence for a conviction of illegal campaign funding. Now, his lawyer sought to merge those two sentences, which were separate, into one conviction, but the decision to do that was overturned. Now, the decision may require the ex-president, who served one term from 2007 to 2012, and has faced a series of legal issues since office, to again wear an electronic ankle tag. Now, just as a reminder as to what took place last year, Sarkozy became the modern France's first president to have gone to jail, and he served 20 days in a case related to alleged Libyan funding in his 2007 election campaign. We know that 71-year-old has also received two definitive convictions in regards to what took place. Now, Sarkozy is the first French leader to be incarcerated since another Philippe Pétain, the Nazi collaborationist, head of state, who was jailed just after World War II. But that is the information in regards to that. He has a number of appeals coming up, which we will definitely make sure we are across and you guys are updated on. We now go to our next headline, and that is on a news website in regards to what's taking place in Iran when oil climbs past 119 a barrel as Iran crisis squeezes global supply. That has been updated because oil prices have actually now taken a tumble. And if we go to the Guardian website as well, that shows more details, as after Trump decided to have suggested that the US-Israel war on Iran could end very soon. Now it's the Brent crude, the international benchmark, which served beyond $100 yesterday, but now it's gone down to $98.50. So we do know that after Donald Trump spoke and said that actually the war is going to end very soon, we now know that that has had an impact on the markets, and oil prices have come down slightly. We are going to look into more detail into the story in relation to Iran and the conflict there with the US and Israel in this report. Take a look.
US President Donald Trump says the war against Iran could end soon, but warned that military operations will continue until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. Speaking in Florida, Trump described the campaign as a short-term excursion, claiming US and Israeli forces have already destroyed much of Iran's military infrastructure.
We continue to target Iran's drone and missile capabilities. Their drones are way down. Their drone manufacturing's been hit.
Trump also stressed that Washington's goal is to ensure Iran cannot develop weapons that could threaten the United States, Israel, or their allies for a long time. Meanwhile, Israel says it has continued carrying out waves of airstrikes across Iran, targeting military command centers, missile production facilities, and other infrastructure linked to the Iranian military. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described the conflict as a war imposed on Iran, insisting the country's actions are acts of self-defense. He also said Iran is unlikely to resume negotiations with Washington after what he called a bitter experience with past talks. The conflict escalated further after Mojtaba Khamenei was appointed Iran's new supreme leader following the death of his father, Ali Khamenei, in earlier US-Israeli strikes. With the fighting now entering its second week, tensions remain high across the region, raising concerns the conflict could widen further.
Staying on the war in Iran, and oil prices have fallen after surging to their highest level in more than 3 years as US President Donald Trump signaled the war could end sooner than expected. Markets reacted quickly, but analysts warn volatility is likely to continue.
Global oil markets have been swinging sharply as the conflict involving Iran disrupts supplies from one of the world's most critical energy regions. At the start of the week, prices surged above $100 a barrel and briefly approached $120, their highest levels since 2022. Traders feared a prolonged conflict could cut supplies from the Gulf, particularly after shipping through the Strait of Hormuz was disrupted. The narrow waterway carries around a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas. Tankers have struggled to move through the area, while some producers halted pumping as storage filled. Prices then dropped more than 6% after US President Donald Trump predicted the war could end sooner than expected and outlined steps to ease pressure on energy markets.
I might add, we're also waiving certain oil-related sanctions to reduce prices. So we have sanctions on some countries. We're going to take those sanctions off till this straightens out. Then who knows, maybe we won't have to put them on. There'll be so much peace. But when the time comes, the U.S. Navy and its partners will escort tankers through the strait if needed.
Shortly afterwards, Trump also posted on X warning Iran against blocking oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, saying the United States would respond with far stronger military action if the flow of oil was stopped. Despite the drop, analysts say the conflict could keep markets on edge.
And if we keep on pushing above $100 a barrel and get more toward like 110, I think you're going to see that nationwide pump price average get close to $4 a gallon. That's painful for consumers, and it's probably also painful for elected leaders, the politicians. We're also going to see higher prices in things like airfares, so travel will become more expensive. And then we also have to worry about the second order effects on things like the equity markets.
Analysts warn there could also be wider knock-on effects on financial markets, saying falling stock portfolios and retirement savings could weaken consumer confidence and business spending, potentially pushing the economy towards recession. Governments in Europe are also weighing possible emergency measures as prices surge.
The oil reserves are being held exactly for situations like this. If we are facing crisis, if we are facing disruptions of supply, that's exactly where we can intervene.
The shock is already spreading through national economies. Egypt has raised domestic fuel prices by up to 17%, while Pakistan has announced emergency measures to cut government fuel use after record increases in petrol and diesel prices.
Even though oil prices are slightly falling, concern still remains about supply and inflation. G7 countries say they are ready to respond if needed as markets react to disruptions and uncertainty in key energy routes.
On Monday, G7 countries said they are prepared to take measures to support energy supplies in response to the sharp rise in global oil prices. However, finance ministers have yet to decide on releasing strategic reserves. French Finance Minister Lescure said there are no supply problems in Europe or the US.
I want to be very clear today. The oil market, and the gas market as well, is being affected by disruptions mainly linked to the fact that oil and gas exports leaving the Middle East are heading to Asia, a region therefore directly impacted by market upheavals.
On Monday, oil prices reached their highest levels since mid-2022. The rise was driven by shipping disruptions and production cuts from some oil-producing countries. A G7 official said there is broad agreement not to release reserves at this stage. The final decision rests with G7 leaders. IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol said the market has worsened in recent days. Transit issues through the Strait of Hormuz and production cuts are creating serious risks. Birol also said he is in regular contact with energy ministers from Saudi Arabia, Brazil, India, Azerbaijan and Singapore. The IEA reports that member countries hold over 1.2 billion barrels of public oil reserves, plus an additional 600 million barrels of industry stocks. The agency was established after the 1970s oil crisis. Member countries are required to keep at least 90 days' worth of oil imports in reserve. In 2022, over 180 million barrels of oil were released collectively. Energy supply problems in the region could raise global prices and inflation. On Monday morning in Asia, Brent crude rose over 25% to $119.50 a barrel, then fell to about $102. UK gas prices jumped to 171 pence per therm, then dropped to 149 pence. Global stock markets fell, S&P 500 down 0.2%, Dow Jones 0.5%, FTSE 100 0.3%. Shell and BP shares rose 2.4% and 1.9%. Germany's DAX fell 0.8%. France's CAC 40 down 1%, Japan's Nikkei 225 down 5.2%, South Korea's Kospi down 6%. In the UK, interest rates keep rising, 2-year bonds at 4.09%, 10-year at 4.72%.
NATO says it is ready to defend all allies after Iranian ballistic missiles entered Turkish airspace for the second time this week. The missiles were intercepted by Turkish and NATO forces after entering airspace near the Syria border. The incident comes as US-Israeli strikes on Iran continue, raising tensions across the Middle East. In response, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan warned that Turkey will take all necessary measures to defend its territory and strengthen national security.
Akabinde İran makamlarına gerekli ikazlar yapıldı.
After interception of the first missile, we warned Iranian authorities. But I have to underline that, despite our sincere warnings, provocative steps are being taken by Iran, which will jeopardize the friendship of Turkey.
Ve provokatif adımlar atılmaya devam ediyor.
You're watching Daybreak on A News. Stay with us as we take a very quick break. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. Now we're going to turn our focus to what's taking place in Iran and the wider impact it's having in regards to oil prices. I'm now joined by a guest in the studio. He is a strategic affairs expert, Dr. Hamid Khan Al-Mashriqi. Good morning. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you, Nadia.
So my first question is, there's been an emergency meeting with G7 countries, but has not produced a concrete outcome to that particular meeting. But since then, President Donald Trump has actually spoken and in relation to the war in Iran, and has said that it's going to end very soon. And due to that, oil prices actually came down. What do you now think is next? Does another G7 meeting need to take place? Do they need to look into getting more reserves? What should happen?
Yes, Nadia. Actually, the situation is very critical. Although with the statement of President Donald Trump that the war may end soon, it has dropped the prices, but it is very temporary because we have seen in last few hours, American forces have bombed Iran most intensely than since the war has started. So they are bombing on the east of Iran, north and west of Iran, Tehran city as well. And it is I would say, it has entered in a different phase now. So I can see that this crisis of oil prices is gonna go more critical unless there is a tangible effort to end this war is not done by the G7 countries or other countries in the world, because the Strait of Hormuz is absolutely closed, and as long as the blockade of Strait of Hormuz is carry on, there is no chance that there will be any betterment in the oil prices crisis. On the other hand, we have seen the attacks on so many oil refineries by both sides. I mean, on Iran oil refineries, and on the other hand, the refineries in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain. It is making it more critical and worsen the situation. Coming days are going to be very critical. President Trump's statement is not what his actions are. So his actions are making the war even more and more intense, and we have seen that. And on the other hand, since this new supreme leader has been selected, the son of Khamenei, Mujtaba Khamenei, the stance and by the Iran government and their actions and their resistance, their retaliation is carried on, and they are targeting similarly even heavily to the American assets. So I think this is the time when G7 countries has to sit together, has to come up with some plan how to control the oil prices, because in some of the researches it says it can go up to $150 a barrel. It can go across more than that. So that will be very critical.
Yes, no, definitely. And we also know that Pakistan and Bangladesh are definitely feeling the pinch just because it imports a high number of oil to its country. I believe it's 80 to 90% of its fuel is heavily reliant on exports from the Strait of Hormuz. So what can other countries do to combat the lack of oil reaching them?
Yes, definitely. I mean, almost 20% of the world oil is, coming through the Strait of Hormuz, and it is a very large quantity. As you said as well, that countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, or other countries, they are very much depending on the oil through that, and we have seen a price hike in Pakistan as well. It's like almost, I would say, over 20% price has been increased within last 3 days in the oil prices, which will bring a lot of crisis in terms of price hike in the country as well. Similarly with many other countries. So this is the time when regional countries has to sit together also to resolve this issue. But the problem is that at the moment there is no framework, there is no chances of reduction in escalation even, because on the one side there is carried on attacks on Iran, on the other hand they're carried on retaliation, rockets and drones attacks by Iran. So there is some, I think, sense must prevail, and they must come to some kind of framework to stop this war. Because the biggest fear is that if the other countries involved in it, that would be very catastrophic for the region.
Exactly that. No one wants it to widen further than it needs to be. But just on that, a number of countries have actually spoken out in relation to the conflict, including France, who has called Iran to stop and find diplomatic ways of dialogue. He also contacted the US to do the same thing. Do you think that there is a neutral mediator that can come between the US, Israel and Iran in order to put an end to the conflict in the Middle East?
Sadly, there is no very clear neutral mediator because now this is a multipolar world which has divided into two, three major blocks. And some of the countries where they are openly supporting Iran, such as China, Russia, and other countries. On the other hand, even Europe is openly supporting USA. But yes, efforts must be done by the countries like France is doing effort. Oman was taking part in dialogues and negotiations even prior to start of this war. So I think the countries like Oman and regional countries, Pakistan and other countries, Turkey, can play a major role in some kind of ceasefire, immediately ceasefire, and then to stop this war. At the same time, the global powers has to intervene because actually it is more depending on America how they want to carry on the war as compared to Iran, because I think Iran is willing to stop anything if the war is stopped from the attacks are ended on their. But it's more on America what they want to achieve, because at the moment, other than assassination of their previous supreme leader Khamenei, Iran, America have not achieved much. Like they wanted to change the regime there, and they wanted to control or they wanted to destroy the nuclear, plants there, which has not been done. And these are the three major objectives which has not been achieved by Americans so far, and that's why it seems that America wants to carry on unless they achieve their targets.
No, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Al Mashakrid, for joining me this morning and for explaining that. That's been very helpful. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Europe is now boosting its military presence in the eastern Mediterranean and Red Sea as tensions linked to Iran rise. France is sending additional warships to escort commercial vessels, while allies including Greece and the Netherlands reinforce regional defences to protect trade routes. Now we have Anita Sharma with more details.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, with France expanding its military footprint across the eastern Mediterranean and the Red Sea. This as Europe responds to rising tensions linked to Iran. President Emmanuel Macron, speaking during a visit to Cyprus, announced that France will send a second warship to the Red Sea to reinforce the EU's maritime protection mission, Aspidus. The vessels will help escort commercial shipping through waters increasingly threatened by attacks from Iran-aligned Houthi militants. The deployment is part of a broader French buildup across the region. Macron says nearly 12 French naval vessels, including an aircraft carrier strike group and helicopter carriers, are being positioned across the eastern Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and potentially the Strait of Hormuz to safeguard trade routes and deter escalation. This all follows what officials say was the first drone strike linked to the Iran conflict on European territory. Last week, an Iranian-made Shahed drone hit a British military base on Cyprus, prompting European allies to reinforce defenses. Standing alongside the president of Cyprus and the Greek prime minister, Macron declared that an attack on the island is effectively an attack on Europe. France has already sent a frigate and air defense systems to help protect the island, while Greece deployed fighter jets and additional naval patrols. The moves underscore growing concern that the Middle East conflict could spill into European security and disrupt some of the world's most important energy and shipping routes. And that's why the Netherlands also said it would send the air defense and control frigate Evertsen to the eastern Mediterranean, specifically as part of the carrier strike group led by the French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle. For Paris and its European partners, the signal is unmistakable. Europe is no longer just watching the crisis from afar. It's positioning naval power across the region to defend its territory, its allies, and the global trade routes that keep its economy moving. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
US President Donald Trump voiced concern over Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khomeini, while highlighting US strikes that have crippled Iran's navy and missile capabilities. He warned that any attempts to block oil passages through the Strait of Hormuz would face a severe response. Obey Shabanda has more.
President Trump has signaled his displeasure with the appointment of Mojtaba Khomeini, the son
of the late Ayatollah who was killed by Israeli and American airstrikes as Iran's new supreme leader. When asked whether the U.S. would target the new Iranian leader, President Trump said that he'd prefer not to disclose U.S. intentions for the time being. The president told reporters that the U.S. had achieved many of its objectives and significantly reduced Iran's ballistic missile capabilities and wiped out its navy. Officials in Washington believe that Trump may still order the elimination of Mujtaba Khamenei if he refuses to abide by U.S. demands. Meanwhile, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards continue to launch missile and drone strikes targeting the energy infrastructure of Arabian Gulf states allied with the U.S. President Trump said that the U.S. Navy is considering the option of escorting oil tankers to ensure their safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. That has calmed oil markets for the time being. Meanwhile, Iranian oil storage facilities and refineries have also been targeted throughout this week, and President Trump has said that Iran's ability to launch missiles was one of the main reasons for why Operation Epic Fury was launched. Most of Iran's air defense network has been entirely neutralized. On Monday evening, Trump renewed his warning to Iran that any attempts to prevent the free flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz will be met with a harsh response that could, in his words, quote, make it virtually impossible for Iran to ever be built back as a nation again. I'm Ube Shabander, A News, Washington.
Now we head over to Brazil, and a team of volunteers in Rio de Janeiro are helping those with disabilities and reduced mobility experience the Big Blue. It's called Praia para Todos in Portuguese and means beach for all. It's an initiative that started 18 years ago and trained volunteers assist participants to dip and swim in the sea. This project includes a number of beaches across the country, from Copacabana, Barra do Tijuca and Ipanema, and serves around 50 people with disabilities.
It's a free project. We're here to offer the welcoming and receptive environment that people with disabilities deserve to have a complete and quality beach experience.
It's empowering to know that all people with disabilities have the right to an inclusive and dignified ocean swim with accessible equipment.
Those volunteers are doing some great work out there in Brazil. Well, thank you so much for watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani, this morning. I'll be back tomorrow to take you through the latest updates throughout the morning, but make sure you stay tuned to A News. Take care.